I didn't really think that much of the ocean before, I suppose. It was a good source of food. But after the trip, seeing how we have affected the marine life in the ocean, it's made me think about changing some of the ways that we do things for the better of the reef, for future generations to come.
I knew there was effects that we did on cause, like sea level rises and that sort of stuff. But now actually being out on the ocean and seeing everything that's happening under the water and whatnot, it really, inspires you to do more.
Ended up going up to the Torres Strait Islands, and when we were up there, we worked with some kids from the local communities up there. And what we did was we took cameras, took them down to the beach, and asked the kids to just take some photos of whatever was on the beach and what they wanted to be on the cover of Torres News the next day to accompany that photo.
Joe Pollock is a PhD student at James Cook University. He was on an educational trip to the Torres Strait when he hit on a link between scientific research and the communities directly affected by changing ocean ecosystems.
So what started out as a program where I was planning to teach these kids what I knew about marine science turned into this program just started to get them talking about what they knew about marine science. So not necessarily even thinking that it was marine science, just day-to-day interactions with the sea, with the tides, with marine organisms. And that got me thinking about just what a huge and vast resource of knowledge there was within these traditional owner groups of information on marine science, on the Great Barrier Reef. So basically went from that program, came back to Townsville, and was very keen to continue working with traditional owner groups, particularly students, to try and build linkages with marine science, and realized there wasn't really anything going on in that realm.
So Joe set about building those linkages himself, with the help of colleagues at the Australian Institute of Marine Science, James Cook University and Orpheus Island. He developed a program called ATSIMS, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders in Marine Science. And then he took it to schools. ATSIMS took 40 students from schools in and around Townsville to visit the facilities at the 3 research centres.
My favourite part was AIMS because it showed us how they use the CSIM to figure out how pH levels and temperature and water currents affect the coral.
My favourite part of the whole thing was probably Orpheus Island, because we got to physically interact with the coral and the fish in that and actually identify which fish and coral there was.
After AIMS, I found that the algae-eating fish weren't eating the algae on the coral, which meant the coral was dying and wasn't getting enough sunlight. Everything we do, everything that affects the ocean affects the ecosystem and how the corals spawn and how the fish get their food and live.
Yeah, it's very vital to keep these fish and these coral in amazing condition to help them for many years to come.
Clearly, the students got a lot out of the ATSIMS project, and it's set to continue in 2014. But what about the benefits for marine science?
Once you start to get the traditional owners and the Western marine scientists working together, there's a lot of different opportunities for synergies. So just for example, eyes on the reef. You've got these traditional owners who are out there on the reef every single day. If things are changing, if something strange is happening, they're the first ones to see it. So for example, we had a gentleman named Jim Gaston who works down in Bowen, and he and his wife started up this turtle tagging and tracking program because they were hunting the turtles, but he really had this interest in, are these turtle fisheries sustainable? Are we taking more than we should be? So he started tagging them and tracking them, and that's been going on for 30 years now. And so he's been able to find some really interesting stuff. Like, they were the first to notice these weird lesions on the necks of the turtles and on the bodies of the turtles. So he took that hands-on, seeing the reef every single day, contacted some researchers at James Cook University. They came down, did some tests, and found out that it's this herpes-like virus. So you get that hands-on in the water every single day where you can start to see how things are going, if there's some weird things happening. Then once you build those linkages with the Western science, you can get the hands-on with the Western science, bring them together to really learn more and more and more. So that's one example of how the linkages can work.
Over the 5 weeks, I think my favourite would have been having the one-on-one chats with the specialists and just finding out like specific things that they can like help and do within the environment and how they can do that, and it really inspired me to look down the path and do it myself.
The reef scientists of the future from William Ross High in Townsville. This has been the series Saving the Ocean, a co-production between ABCRN and the BBC World Service. The series was produced by me, Joel Werner, and the BBC's Julian Siddle. And that's it for Me and Off Track in 2014. From next week, Anne Jones is in the hot seat. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you sometime in 2015. Bye for now.